Alright, today I've got a little basket of bifaces and brokes and bifaces, but these are not mine. I was gifted these, and I apologize, I forget who gifted them to me, and they might be mixed together from two different people. Anyway, I'm just going to quickly refurbish these. So the video is going to be called refurbishing bifaces, I guess. I'll be explaining what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, like a tutorial. Alright. It'll all be indirect percussion, and all of it with these 3/8 inch copper rods. The longer one is 12 inches long. These are 3/8 inch diameter. Some of them already have some wear and tear. I forgot to grind them down so that they'd be ready for the video, but it doesn't matter too much because I'm not going to refine these bifaces. I'm just going to refurbish them and make them into, let's say, bifaces that are ready for thinning. Yeah, I might thin down some of them more than others, depending on the material. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I've got to get rid of these square edges, if there's any on these pieces. And this is broken right there, so I've got to reshape it and look at the length and try to capture as much length as possible. So to get rid of a square edge, I find that it's easiest just to zigzag it without doing any abrading. The previous flake scar is your striking area, or part of the previous flake scar is your striking area. You know, the flake scar is big, but you only are concerned with the part that's near the edge, and I'm hitting downward right from the surface, slightly inward, I guess, but since this arcs a little bit, it does exert some inward force, even though it seems like I'm just hitting downward. Since it's arced, you know, it'll drive some force inward a little bit. Not very much, but it does make a difference. When I'm in the process of refurbishing bifaces, I tend to look at what was the intent. Does it need to be a certain size? If not, then I can just do the basic teardrop shape. The teardrop shape covers all my bases. I can make almost anything from a teardrop shape or a leaf-shaped biface. Looks like we have some church bells. So, to preserve the maximum length, this is going to be the tip now. So, and I also look to see if it's curved or if there's any major defects in the material or the workmanship. Since these are not mine, sometimes there'll be a curve or something like that. I gotta take that out first, see what I have left. Taking out a curve usually reduces the length. So just downward flakes to shape the outside for now. I'm not going to do much thinning, so I'm not going to be driving a lot of these flakes inward. Some of them maybe, yes, just to get rid of lumps. But I'm going to try to get done, or I'm going to try to get as many of those done as I can in a short period of time. For this first one, I'm kind of taking my time to get back into working Obsidian. I haven't worked much. I know I've worked some glass in the previous videos, but Obsidian is slightly different. It has inconsistencies, and it's a little more shattery and crushy on the edges, so to speak, than modern glass. Obsidian is a little more stone-like, just a little bit. So I'm going to zigzag this. That's the default type of method to get rid of that square edge. Square edge can result from breakage, as well as a natural square edge, like there was a natural square edge on that side from the original nodule or spall. So to make this into a teardrop or leaf shape, I gotta remove this big old area here. So again, I'm just gonna hit downward, so it's very low risk. Shaping is very low risk in general when you do it this way. I can also do it with the billet, right? But it's higher risk. I should have mentioned that it's very low risk with indirect percussion, doing it this way with just little flakes. The billet can be faster, but it's higher risk because the accuracy is not as good. But if you want to eliminate a lot of material fast, there's no substitute for a bop or a billet or some kind of direct percussion. Indirect is slightly slower. Not much. Unless you're not used to the indirect percussion, then it is going to take a long time in comparison to the billet, because this I can trim really, really fast and remove a lot of material quickly with this, both in terms of thickness and the edge. But it's not as accurate, or I'm not as accurate with it, so I don't use it all that much. I prefer to trim and shape with indirect percussion. Now I'm driving in some flakes because I see that the edge is very bulky, so I'm going to drive a little bit inward also. But in general, I'm just preparing it for thinning. I'm making sure the convexity is symmetrical. It's always best if everything's symmetrical and straight, if you want a nice, clean, modern look to the piece. If you want it to look a little bit more realistic, you'll leave in some bumps and curves and minor step fractures and that kind of thing. But I'm assuming I'm going to go for the nice, clean, modern look. That's what sells the best anyway. And it's for good reason. I mean, I like the nice clean look as well. When something is for sale, I look to see how well made it is. Yeah. I hardly ever buy pieces from other knappers. I get lots of gifts, so I'm lucky I don't need to buy that much. I got a bunch of stuff made by other knappers for free. Yeah. And sometimes I trade points. And there are places where online where you can join a forum and they can, or I mean, they sometimes have trades, so you can see how other people are making their points and stuff. Alright, so what am I doing? I'm trying to thin this a little bit, but it's not working all that great because I'm taking big bites out of the side. This is a very delicate banded obsidian. It's almost like a dacite. What knappers call dacite is not what geologists call dacite. And some knappers say dacite. I got used to saying dacite. What it is basically is obsidian that's not transparent. Dacite tends to be more grainy or feels more like stone, and it doesn't have translucency. Except on the very, very edge. But it's still obsidian. Alright, so just a little bit more. And this will be ready for thinning. I'm thinning the edges, yes, but I'm not thinning the whole piece. If you notice, hardly any flakes went past halfway, so it's still pretty thick in the middle. So this is the goal. This type of biface, okay, for my refurbishing. So it's ready for thinning now. The convexity is pretty good. It might be a little bit wonky, but that's okay. I don't like them to be perfect, so the convexity has to be good. I don't like to have any flat spots anywhere because the flakes like to run over curved surfaces. And then I want the edges to be straight and not have any curvature in the whole piece. Now there's a little bit of a dip on the base down here. I try to get rid of all that too. All those little inconsistencies on the edges. Yeah, so that looks a little bit better. So now it's ready for thinning. I do thinning in two stages. I call it the preliminary thinning, where I don't know what the ratio would be. Let's say 4:1 to 5:1. Something like that. Somewhere in that range, 4:1 or 5:1 is a preliminary thinning. And then the secondary thinning is when you go 6:1 or even thinner with the thickness ratio. Sometimes they stop at 5:1, and that's just preliminary thinning. And if I say it's good enough, or if I think it's good enough, I'll just leave it. So what is this one? This feels good to just set aside, so let's see what it is. 50 millimeter by, let's see, is that 8 or 9? Let's call it 9. So 9 into 50. Let's see, 9. It's like between 5:1 and 6:1. It might even be 10. So we can call it 10 millimeter. Yeah. 5:1. Okay, so that's my goal for all these pieces. Something similar to that, at about a 5:1 with the thickness ratio, unless it's already better than that. Then I just leave it. So I'll be going more quickly, and I'm looking for curvature and taking care of the worst problems first. I think curvature is probably the worst problem, and then I'll go for thinning down the ends. I need to make sure I maintain the maximum length by default. I try to preserve the most length possible. Now I can do this with the little bopper. Let's see. It's a little less tedious, but sometimes it can remove a lot. Sometimes it removes a little bit too much. What was that noise? The Velcro on my gaiters was rubbing against the plastic bin that I am sitting on. Okay. There's not much to be done on this. Yeah, it's already thin. And there's no curvature. I'm just going to make sure the surfaces are convex. Let me fix this so it's not making noise. Okay. Now what about step fracturing? Yeah, if I see step fracturing, I want to get rid of that too. So if I did not mention it, see how this has got a smooth surface with no step fracturing? That's also a goal. So this basic shape, this basic convexity, this ratio of 5:1 with the thickness ratio, and straight edge and all that. This is the goal. Okay, if there's a step fracture, I need to remove it at this stage. And there's some little bitty step fractures on this. So I'll try to run some flakes. With the priority being thinning the ends first. If I'm going to do any kind of large flakes or long flakes, I got to make sure that I have most of my thickness in the middle. It's just a good habit to get into. It keeps the biface strong, and you often need to strike it really hard for some of these flakes. So you want it to be strong and not break in half when you need to remove a big flake. Now sometimes it can't be avoided. It's just the nature of the material. It's very brittle. But you can minimize your risk by keeping the center, or the part that's going to snap easily, which is usually right in the middle, keep it thicker. Wherever you think it's going to snap easy, keep it thicker there. And yes, you can have a thick tip if you want. You don't have to taper it down like I do. You can keep it the same thickness all the way down, like some of the artifacts, and just bevel it. And sometimes it'll put a twist in the tip. So if you look at it from the side, it doesn't look tapered, but if you turn it a little bit with that twist in it, then you can see the taper. I think you know what I mean. If not, then I'll have to do a separate video. You can ask me to do a separate video on making points with twists. Or twists and bevels tend to go in hand. Yeah, twists and bevels go hand in hand. All right. I'm going to try to get some of these step fractures out of here. Yeah, there goes one. I removed one. And I'm going to remove thick spots from the edge too while I'm here. And there's a step fracture there. Let's see if I can run a flake across from here. It's kind of risky, but I think I can do it. If not, I can come in from this side, or even if those don't work, I can come in from this side. So I'm just going to creep my way down. I see a fat spot here, so let's get rid of that first. And then work my way down. Let's try this. That was not too good because it stepped a little bit. Let's see. What did that do? It kind of got it, but let's see. See if I can pick that up. Yeah. So that kind of removed some of it. I'm thinning this. There's another step fracture here on this side. Let's see. That's okay. Now there isn't. But I like to thin down the edge and do other things while I'm looking at this. Okay, that's why I'm kind of all over the place. I still want to shoot at that, but it appears to be not that easy. See, that flake here should have taken that out, but it didn't, so I've got to try it from another spot, but it doesn't look like it's any better as far as opportunities go. I crammed it down a little bit more than I needed. Let's see. Yeah, see, as far as opportunities go, it wasn't that great, so it stopped right there. Usually a frontal attack like that doesn't work all that well. It's basically a frontal attack because I didn't come in from a long ways away. I hit right here into that, so it's a frontal attack. That might work sometimes. Depending on the material. Some material is cooperative. And as long as the step fracture is not too large. But it seems like that step fracture was a little bit too large, so it didn't work. So I'm going to have to come in from the other side. Plan B. So let's start trimming the other side. In preparation for a strike. Hopefully no step fractures are being installed. Yeah, looks like there's some crushing. This is a little bit more brittle than the last piece. Come on. So easy to install step fractures. But the shorter the flakes, the less chance there is for step fracturing on really brittle material. Yeah, this side's not too bad. Now, normally I don't try to remove an obstacle with the ending of the flake, but in this case, I don't have much choice if I want to get rid of that. And for a nice, modern, clean look, sometimes you got to take chances that you normally wouldn't. If you're just trying to replicate something you've seen in a museum or whatever, you don't need to. It doesn't need to be perfect. If you're trying to replicate something you've seen in the archaeological record. All right, so let's see. Let's try to get this nice and smooth with long flakes. Did it do it? It broke, but I think it did it. Almost. That's a pretty long flake. It did get the majority of it, but it ended with a little step fracture. But that's okay. So I'll continue removing some of the fat spots along this edge. Making sure that the overall convexity is good. Making sure that it's not too thick. Why not too thick? It just takes a few minutes to thin it down just a little bit more, and then when I get to thinning these down later, if they're all at around the same level of preparation, it just makes it easier to get into the groove of doing the final thinning. That's good enough. Yeah. I can get that out with the thinning. I was just concerned that was going to be a goobery or a boogery spot. Yeah, but it looks okay. Let's see. Next, we gotta speed this up. 25 minutes. See if I can do this one quickly. So, if I see thick spots on the ends, that's what I tend to do first. So I see thick spots. Yeah, there's a dip. Yeah, big old dip right there. In case you missed it, I did not do these bifaces. I'm refurbishing them. I apologize. I cannot remember who sent them to me. And I didn't mark on these. So I don't know. A lot of times I put the address in the box on a piece of paper, but apparently on this batch I didn't do that. Okay. So I've got to take out that curve that's caused by that dip. I just took a few flakes off the base. I'm just going to leave the base for now because I think this, after looking at this is worse. This problem up here is worse. Now, there are other considerations like, is it going to be really delicate if I do it in a certain way? Is there a way to do it to where it's not going to be so risky as far as taking the curve out? The only thing I can say is just take small flakes, makes it less risky. I can try to take big flakes in areas where I see a lot of mass, but to be less risky, I will take smaller flakes and then leave the larger thinning flakes for later when I'm in the thinning mindset. Right now I'm not in the thinning mindset. It's just the shaping. That's my mindset right now. I'm just shaping it into the form that I specified earlier. Okay, smooth, no step fracturing, thin on the ends, 5:1 ratio, straight edges, that kind of thing. I'm sure I left something out. That's basically the goal for each one of these. Now some of them are going to be a little bit weird. I think there's a couple of really, really thin ones in there. So those are treated a little bit differently. If they're messed up and they're really thin, sometimes I got to make them very narrow to run flakes across. As an example, on these I have not had that need to make them narrow. See, when they're really thin and they're wide, the flakes want to dive in if it's not convex, right? Thinness usually removes the convexity and makes it almost flat. So it makes it hard to run longer flakes across the surface. So again, I'm noticing that the base is really thick. Let me take some of that off. It also helps me to establish a line. I'm working on that center line. Sometimes I need to adjust the center line down here a little bit. If it's not really cooperating here, I might have to just adjust down here and get a center line. So it was looking like it was starting to need me to trim a little bit off the base here to get that lined up better. Yeah, I'm worried that there's a thin spot right here. If I want to hit or remove some big flakes. I want to hit hard and remove some big flakes, but I should not. Yeah, I'm gonna play it safe. Little flakes, little flakes. Keep it as wide and as long as possible. Because if I do that, I have more options for what I want to make. Yeah, it gives me more options if I leave it as wide and as long as possible. Now I'm removing some material off the center just because I need to make sure that it is going to be able to be straight. If it looks like I can't straighten it at the existing length, then I'll have to remove some length. But it looks okay. So I'm just testing little areas, like when I removed off the center, I wanted to make sure that I was actually able to remove some off of the center. Especially from this side, because it's really thin. It's hard to remove a long flake when you have a thin edge. It worked out okay. This is going to take a little bit of time to get that edge straight. I'm just going to have to whittle it down little by little. And, you know, keep reducing the width if it's not cooperating as far as driving in flakes. If they start to dive in like that too much, it means it doesn't have enough convexity and I've got to make it more narrow. When you make it narrow, you cut down on the sides here. You know what I'm saying? You trim. So instead of being flat there, it's trimmed when you make it more narrow, and that increases the convexity. But you got to take short flakes. Yeah. If you're removing width and then you take long flakes, you're not really increasing the convexity all that much. So yeah, I need to remove some mass on here, from here. Yeah. Struck a little bit too hard. To keep that center line straight. Or keep the edge straight right along that center line. I had to reduce some width there. So I do this at random. I look at each side and see, and go back and forth and see how it's progressing. I might favor one side or the other depending on how it's going. If I feel like one side is not cooperative, I'll start knapping the other side. As an example. That's not the only reason why. That's an example. Okay, so that was very convex. The edge was strong, so I took the chance on removing a big flake, and it looks like it straightened it out pretty good. I remove that lump here so that the whole thing got straighter. Again, I don't want to remove too much of the convexity at this stage. trim the edge. Trimming the edge increases the convexity. As long as you don't drive long flakes. You can drive long flakes while you're trimming and do two things at once. But you got to be careful not to flatten the middle too much. You need to be able to drive long flakes. Yikes. So I'm trying to achieve a nice, modern, clean surface. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because it's not said enough. Even though everybody knows that artifacts are not perfect, they don't nap like they know that. They nap like they want to make modern points. They don't want any step fractures. They don't want any inconsistent edges. No, they want it all the same, all the way down, as far as the sharpness, as far as the lumps, no lumps. You know, like a machine made it. Modern nappers tend to be very mechanical about the whole thing. They don't want to do expedient type of napping once they get better at it. You know, expedient saying, oh, we'll just call it good. We'll do this and that, and we'll just call it good, even though it's not perfect. A lot of modern nappers don't nap that way. They hate that. They want it to be perfect. So I'm going to get as close to perfect as I feel does the job. Yeah, so everything is convex. The surface is smooth. The edges are straighter. There's no curve in it. There might be a lump right there, but I can get that during the thinning phase. This is basically shaping, although I did run a thinning flake right there, just so I could eliminate that lump to make it look straighter. So yeah, that's good. So this session, 37 minutes. I got 3. I'm going to do another session after this. But that's good for now. Let's see. Do this in order. 1, 2, 3. Actually, I can't see these with my glove on very well. The glove is gray and the bifaces are gray. There we go. All right, there you go. That's it.